welcome back. This is Amanda from Hook'em Creations, and this is part 2 of the series of the Bernat Christmas stocking, vintage Christmas stocking, I'm sorry. And if you don't know what that is or don't know what's going on, please go back to the first video where I explain everything and basically start off this project. This is part 2. This is the color work and how to change colors, the Fair Isle part of knitting, which is my favorite thing to do. Shockingly, is the Fair Isle color work type knitting that I love to do. And it's a lot of fun. So we're going to get into that with this video, but before I get started, I want to show you what I'm going to be knitting first. So in the pattern, we have to write the name on the Christmas stocking. And normally I write it out, or at least trace it out on the piece of paper, but I got a fancy iPad now, so I have it on my iPad. So I'm going to be using my iPad to keep track of things. But when you're knitting, you're not going to be knitting from the bottom to the top. Actually, you're going to be, for this project in particular, it's going to be upside down. So we're going to be knitting from the top down to the bottom. So everything is upside down. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It really messes with your brain at first, but once you get the hang of it, it really isn't that bad. Not all knitting projects are like this. Some are, some aren't. When you're knitting hats, typically you start from the bottom and work your way up. But for the Christmas stockings, just like socks, traditionally you start around the cuff and then work your way down to the heel and down to the toe. But there are stockings and socks where you start with the toe first. But this one, you start with the cuff and then work your way down. So, let's get started. To start this section off, I need to change colors. And so I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. You're going to take your needle. First thing you're going to do is you're going to start like you're going to knit. Take the color you're going to change into. Put your yarn around the needle and pull through and drop it off just like normal knitting. Make sure you grab the yarn that is attached to your skein or the ball of yarn. And since we're doing stockinette stitch, we are going to knit all the way across, like so. I normally get a couple stitches in first before I cut off the second color, just to make sure. We are all good here. Alright, so I have a couple stitches already there, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up a little bit. And I just do a single knot just because we're going to need to adjust it later on. But because we're going to be sewing this later on, I cut a good 6 to 8 inches of thread, and it's easier when you use the thread that is still attached to your project, at least in my case. It's easier to use it later than it is to just by cutting off yarn and thread and all that stuff. All right, so I have completed the first 5 rows of stockinette stitch. See how pretty that has come out. Very, very pretty. So it's very hard to see with the lighting, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th row is on the needle itself. And since we have to go back on the purl side, I just wanted to show you what it would look like because we did knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. We're going to come in on the purl side and we're going to actually, if it's flipped backward, flipped and upside down, we're going to be starting actually on this side and going across that way. I know that's a lot to take in, but trust me, it does work. Okay, let me show you. So think of it this way. So this is the top, and we want the name like this, okay? So when we purl, so we already got the first 5 rows, here we go, like this. So we have the first 5 rows, so the next row we're gonna purl and we're gonna write the name backwards this way, and then we'll go right way and then backwards and right way and backwards. It can be very frightening the first time around, but it really is not. It's a lot of fun, and some people enjoy it, others do not, and it's entirely personal choice on that matter. So the lettering is going to be done in red yarn. So I'm going to do my best to try and show you how I do this. Once again, I may be coming in and out of view because my workspace is so tiny. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, no, I'm not knitting. Hello, wake up, Amanda. This is what happens when you don't have coffee. So please buy us some coffee. So we're going to purl stitch. And now here, I'm going to take the red yarn, I'm going to pull it out a little bit. And I'm just kind of getting it prepped up here. This is how I do Fair Isle knitting. Not everybody does it the same way. This is just my little trick that I do, and it seems to work just fine. I've used it on other projects before this, and it has worked. So I have no problem with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end of the yarn and place it in the stitch. And then I'm going to do the stitch. So I do my purl stitch. And it's just going to chill there for a minute. So the red is there, ready to go. So I'm going to purl stitch, and now I'm going to take that red yarn, loop it around, drop the white, pick up the red. Don't pull too tightly on your color changing, because otherwise it will look funky. That's why I kind of spread the stitches out as much as I can, trying to make it as flat as possible. Don't pull too tightly. Wait till you get it nice and flat again. Kind of work with it. It's all based on feel. You're starting to do some color changing. And I'm going to keep on going from here. All right, real quick. I'm going to knit the first 8 stitches. But before I get to the 8th stitch, here's what I like to do to kind of keep everything nice and tidy just a little bit. And once again, I have done this on numerous projects and I've never had any problems with it. Okay, from here, usually about 1 or 2 stitches out, I like to take the color I am going to work with, the accent color, and place that over and then make the stitch, because then it will tighten up a little bit. Because what happens is if you don't pull it over, this stitch here, once you do the work, once you like go drop down or you go over to the side, it kind of looks like an empty hole, in my opinion, and I've never liked it, and I always am like, I wish I knew how to do it better. So I'm going to tighten that up just a bit. And knit that. All right, so I just finished the nameplate of the stocking. Typically this section of typically it takes me about a day to do this. Unfortunately, I had some things that came up, so it took me a bit longer to do the name this time around. So just wanted to share with you guys the first stage of making the stocking is the nameplate. And let me show you the back. I know I forgot to record this part, but wanted to show you the back. So here we have the back of the name, and as you can see here, I showed you my trick earlier where I kind of pull it about 2 stitches away. I kind of pull everything to the side to kind of make it nice and blocked out, so it didn't look like we had some weird holes and such in there, but it's all nice and flat, and there's no gaps, no holes, and and if you look in the front, you don't even see, like, you might see a little bit, but it's mostly because it hasn't been blocked out yet. Once everything blocks out, it'll be fine. You won't see anything. It's really hard. It's kind of hard to do it when you have a different color, like a bright color like red. So I finished it off, and as you can see, I stuck it in, like, I finished it off, I knitted 2 stitches, and then I stuck this in one of the stitches as I was knitting to finish it off, and then I did an additional 5 rows here. And at the end of this series, I'll show you how I weave everything in and like cut off all the tails so it's nice and clean and ready for my client who is getting this stocking. But yeah, this is the beginning part of it, and now I get to move on to the fun part, which is the Christmas trees, the candlestick, and the Christmas wreath. And yeah, this is the fun part coming up next. I wanted to take a moment to talk really quickly about the pattern. I don't know if I mentioned this or not in the earlier videos, but when you are working with vintage patterns, they will say decrease. They don't give a specification on what kind of decrease, they just say decrease. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about which decreases that I use for this particular pattern. So if you're on the knit side and you're starting for that right leaning, going in from to the left. Going into towards the left. For that left leaning decrease, you want to do a knit two together. That's a pretty common one, very basic decrease. If you want to, and once you get to the other end for a right leaning, I do SSK. You will do a PSSO decrease later on in the pattern. I just don't do it for these decreases. Now, if you're on the purl side, like for example, I am on the purl side this time around instead of the knit side because I started a little wonky this round, with this one, but that's okay. So for this example, for a right leaning decrease, you want to do a purl two together. For the left leaning, you want to do the SSP decrease on the other side. So that's what I do, and for this pattern, and I will do a PSSO decrease later on when I get closer to the heel and the toes. So I'll show that to you later on in a different video. All right, I just finished the candlestick section of the Christmas stocking. It's not my favorite section to do, probably because of how big of a section it is. I don't know. It's not my favorite to do, but it's done. It's done, and I'm ready to move on to the next section. And I really like the next section. It's the Christmas wreath of the stocking, and we get to do some fun things like putting stitches onto a holder or a knitting needle, and I will show you how I do that once I get to that part of the stocking. All right, I have gotten to the point in the pattern where I am going to be doing some pretty funky things. So first things first, you're going to need some double pointed needles. And if you have them, they are great. But if you don't have them, it's okay. You don't need them, but you can get some stitch holders. And I'm going to use my stitch holders because I like stitch holders. You can use double pointed needles with some needle caps, the caps that you put on your knitting needles when you're not working on your projects and you stick them in your bags. You can do that so that way your stitches do not come off. So yeah, I'm gonna continue on with my super long straight needles, but I will also be working to get them. I think at one point or another I will be using some double pointed needles here soon as well. So let's get started. So first things first, I'm going to be knitting across. Okay, so I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. 13 is what I needed. So what I'm going to do next is I am going to take my stitch holder. It's basically a big safety pin, and I'm just going to take it one stitch at a time, just slide it off onto my stitch holder here. And voila. No longer need this. I can put this to the side because the next part I'm going to start using the double pointed needles now. So from here, I'm going to take my double pointed needle and purl the other side. So, got all my stitches onto the double pointed needle. I'm going to take my stitch holder. Same thing as last time. Just slip the stitches on to the stitch holder from the needle. There you go. No more stitches on the long straight needle. Got 2 stitch holders. And now I am going to be working on just this section here. Right here with double pointed needles, and I only need one set or one pair, so these two can go back in their thing for right now. But yeah, that's how you slip stitches onto a stitch holder, or transferring from long straight needles to double pointed needles. It's not that hard. As long as you have the same size needles, you should be fine. So I finally finished all of the color work for this Christmas stocking. This is what it looks like when it's all done. I still need to block it, and I will show that in another video in this series. But the next video is going to be how to do the heel, or get the heel started at least. But yeah, I'm going to be trying a different blocking method this time around instead of the traditional way, because it's kind of easier to block while it's still flat instead of an actual stocking, if you know what I mean. I don't know, I'm still playing with the idea, so I guess it'll be a surprise for both of us when you see it in the next video. But this is what it is, and be sure to like and subscribe and follow us. Leave some comments below and buy us some coffee, because that's always helpful. If you like what we're doing, please buy us some coffee. Until next time, happy crafting.